So today you will learn the following for identifying root fractures: optimal planes of view, utilizing filters, and consistent software workflow.
So today we're going to look at identifying root fractures within the Vatech 3DI software, specifically looking at methods and workflows and tools that will help visualize. So today we're going to be looking at our smart scan, and I have our virtual rendering here, and specifically we are going to be looking at tooth number 29 here. So as you can see, I've changed my virtual rendering from the teeth over to the MIP. We can see our previously treated tooth 29. Today I'm going to start in the NPR window and right click here on our hex seal slice and switch this over to the main view. And I'm going to grab this and let's move this down into the mandible. Spacebar to remove our crosshairs. And as I scroll through this, I can identify my tooth number 29. You can see it has been treated. And as we go down inferior, we can start to see that fracture there. And we've highlighted it right here. So some of the tools we can use to visualize this is holding down the control key and using the wheel on the mouse to enlarge.
Yep.
That's our panning tool here to move this to the center. And I'm going to go ahead and focus all my windows right on that tooth. There we are. And if I rotate this on the long axis of the ridge, it gives more of a lateral view here. And switch this to the main view here. And now as I scroll out buccal and then back across lingual, you can see our fracture within that window. Paul, let's talk a little bit about some of the windowing and brightness and contrast tools over here.
Yeah, I like to use some of those brightness and contrast because the width and level under the windowing tools really is going to be brightness and contrast there. So you can adjust your sliders left or right to your preference. And you can also reset if you want to reset it back to the default by that little arrow in the right-hand corner to reset that. But some of the tools below that are really helpful are the sharpening tools. So there's sharpen, and then there's max sharpen. That's a really maximizes the sharpness there. And then also the inverse I find helpful because it just shows a different way of looking, reversing the blacks and whites to give you a different look on the scan.
Right. And really what we're doing here when we're doing this, we're applying certain sets of filters, right? So the inverse here, like you said, switches it, but our max sharpen, it does apply a filter to look at that image there. And as I scroll back and forth, you can see that fracture in great detail there, all the way through there. All right, let's put this on sharpen here. And we've identified that. And Paul, maybe we should move over to the 3D pan tab?
Yeah, let's do it. Yep. Okay. So another way we can look at it from here to kind of progress in looking at this single tooth is to navigate to the 3D pan tab. So I'm going to click on 3D pan. So from here, we have our 3D rendered pan up top and our associated slices, slice views on the bottom. So in our 3D pan here, I'm going to click in my navigation green box here and just simply drag it over to tooth number 29 to get that view right in here, aligning it with the long axis of the tooth. I'm going to hit the scroll button. It's a scroll that allows me just to zoom in on that just to see a little bit better. So I'm going to align it. So I'm in the same angle or direction as that tooth there. So I'm aligning my red slices here in alignment with basically the canal of that tooth there. And we can see on our section slices, and I'm going to hit the control key on my keyboard and scroll, and that will zoom in for me so I can get a view of it that way. From here, if I do a right click, we can see, I can change my interval of my slices. Right now we're at 1 millimeter. I'm going to put that down to 0.1 millimeter just so we have more detail. So that just means the slices are closer together, so they're at 0.1 millimeter of distance between those, so I can scroll and really get a detailed view of that area there. Also, if I want to take a screenshot at this point, because I've identified my scan, what I want to in my scan, I can simply click on the camera up here on the green toolbar, and it will capture a full screen screenshot of that for later. I could also switch my VR colorings. This grayscale maximum intensity, I think, is a great one for my 3D up here. I could also rotate around the tooth to get a full 360-degree view of this on my section slices. So under the scout view here, I can grab, you can see it says LB for lingual buccal, and I can scroll right around this tooth this way to get a full 360 view of that tooth there.
Paul, what about rotating that red line horizontal and then going through the up in your 3D pan? We can
right. So
yeah.
Right. The next step, I could just simply grab the blue dots on either side of this box and really just flip up this box so that red line is horizontal or perpendicular with the tooth as we scroll down. So right now we're right here. So if I, like for instance, I'll grab this line, I'll pull it up right at the crown level, and now as I scroll down the tooth, I can get that through the root view. We'll be able to see it in that view there as well. Right about there. We can clearly see that there. And then, like we discussed before, I can use some of my windowing tools to get some more contrast and clarity over here, my sharpening tools, etc., over here on the left side.
A lot of useful tools within that 3D pan window. That's a nice,
right.
Click around and look really quickly.
Right.
Yep. Paul, I think we have some time to look at our sectional tab and some views with that. So let me do this. I'm going to go ahead and navigate back to our NPR window, and you can see where we left off here. We left off with the kind of long axis through that tooth number 29. So here's our sectional tab. Let's go up to Draw Curve, and let's start how we traditionally draw the curve around the arch. I'm just going to go across and through that tooth there, and let's go right to the midline and double click. That gives us kind of our reconstruction here. So I can use the wheel on my mouse over here, and I can also angle my slice and scroll across, visualizing that root fracture. You can also see your mental frame here with your nerve on there when we do our implant plan. That's one way to draw the curve there. Now another way is if we go draw curve here, we can go across the arch. So I'm going to go out, buccal to lingual, and double click. And now you can see where my slice is here. And let's go out buccal. Let's come back across lingual here. And we're going at our 1 millimeter intervals, scrolling across.
So you're just slicing buccal lingual here, right?
Yeah, and you can see if you want to expand this out, we can even enlarge this to look at more the adjacent teeth. One thing I often do is either right click here and change my intervals to smaller, or I can come up here and change my interval here. Let's take it down to 1/10. You see all my cuts are really close together.
Yep.
Now we're scrolling kind of like you did on the 3D pan. We're scrolling at that 1/10 of a millimeter interval there, which really shows that fracture there.
That's a tell.
No. Now, one last way I like to look at our endo or this root fracture is let's go up to Draw Curve and let's go through the crown down through the apices of the tooth and double click. And now we have a horizontal cut right here. And at that 1/10 of a millimeter, we can scroll and look at that fracture going across all the way through that tooth. Going through there. Those are different ways to do that. Now, the nice thing about the sectional window here is it does catalog all the curves we've drawn. Here's the first one we drew, the second one, and the third one in those different planes of view.
And can you delete those?
We can. So let's go back to this one here. I'll go back to the second one, which is one that was existing. I can right click on here and I can delete my curve individually, or I can delete all of them. So in this case, we can draw up to 8. Once we get to 8, it'll say, hey, you have too many. And then you would have to delete individual curves.
Right.
Another valuable tool with this section is once we close out of the scan, it's going to save all of these curves that we've drawn. So when you come back in, you can go back to your sectional tab and you can have your curves saved within the software. And then I guess lastly, really to complete this case, let's look at some screenshots. I'll go ahead and screenshot here. Captures the full window. Let's go back to our third tracing here. Go into my measurements, capture. Do one window.
So that just captures that single window.
Correct. Right? Yep. And then Paul, I'm going to take us back to our Easy Dent Eye. Do you want to talk about the console?
The console tab is in the 3D software or in Easy Dent Eye, and really we can just go in there and we have all our screenshot captured images below, and whatever we want to display on the screen, all we have to do is click and drag it to the window. This one is set up to a 4-window layout. You can customize that to 1 or 2 or however many you want under change layout, which is really nice. And then basically we just drag our images to the screen so we can, show the patient or compare images, these types of things. We also have console videos in here, which are super helpful. So it breaks down by specialty under the category section, and we can just simply find one that applies to our clinical topic here and just drag it into the window, and it just automatically plays with no sound. It's just an animation there, but it's a really nice patient consultation tool.
Yeah, the benefits of the software. So let's do a quick recap before we end our session. We started with a smart scan. We looked at tooth number 29, where we navigated on the MPR window over to that tooth and looked at the different sectional planes of view. Well, then we did what? Our different filters here, the sharpen, the max sharpen, and inverse.
Yep. Then we navigated to the 3D pan and manipulated it in there to visualize that fracture.
Right. And then we finished up with our sectional window, where we drew our 3 different curves. Also changed our intervals here from 1 millimeter down to the 1/10 of a millimeter.
Yep.
Finally took some screenshots and finished with the console window.
Great.
So I think that's a really good workflow and different options specifically for looking at root fractures. Yep. And identifying them with some of the filtering tools and cataloging them also.
So thank you everyone for joining us today. If you guys have any questions for the education team, please reach out to us at education@vatechamerica.com.
Yeah, and don't forget about our webinar schedule for upcoming webinars. You can see on the homepage, go to webinar schedule here, and you'll have all of our upcoming sessions found under meetings and events. And then also everything, we have a lot of recordings from past events. So you can find them under the Education Academy, under webinar. We have our software tutorials and also devices over here of 3D imaging, but also have our 2D imaging and even our intraoral sensors on there now. Over 200 hours of recorded session there.
Yeah, lots of content.
Well, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. And we look forward to our next session with you.
Thank you.